Hello everyone, welcome to the Sweeney Show, Business Law Podcast. I'm David Sweeney and joining me here today is Ernest Cantillon. Ernest, you're very welcome.
Thank you, thanks Dave.
So Ernest, you're a businessman, entrepreneur based here in Cork City, very prominent in the hospitality industry. How have you been coping at the moment with COVID-19 and everything that's been going on?
A lovely introduction, but more accurately, I'm probably currently unemployed, so that's probably more.
Like the rest of us.
Thanks for setting me up, but and look, it's a strange time. Kind of have adjusted now, I guess, what are we, week 3 or something like this at this stage. So the hard part, I guess, particularly with electric, we're very at this time of year, so going back to February before. At the start of March before tourism had kicked in.
So just for people may not know, you have 2 bars in Cork, bars and restaurants. One is Electric, which is a bar and restaurant, and one is a bar that are quite close to each other on the south side of the city, inner city.
So that's part of Electric that you can see over my shoulder, the fish bar. Ironically, those blue chairs over my shoulder, we ordered them and they arrived the day we closed, which is pretty annoying. So I think somebody pissed me, or was thinking of pissing me by setting all the tables in the background, but anyway. Literally they arrived the day we closed, but we could see corporates like were getting spooked from February and cancelling. So we had a fair idea that this was going to come to head at some stage. So we chatted amongst ourselves, and it got to the stage then where business was dropping off in a big way, and bizarrely hadn't hit sober lane really at all yet. So just different age profiles and whatever. And then we particularly with a lot of foreign staff and Italian people and Eastern Europe, stuff like that, and they were hearing about things happening back home. So they were getting increasingly nervous about whether they should go home or what was going to happen here, or getting even nervous about coming to work. So probably on the Wednesday that week, maybe the week before Paddy's week, we decided that we were going to close on the Saturday. We ended up bringing the day forward to the Friday because we went from 150 bookings on the Saturday to 120 to 90 to 80, whatever. And we chatted some of the senior staff, and they said we'd be much happier not to work. We said, well, look, there's going to be no medals for big markers, and running an empty restaurant for a night. So we decided that on the Thursday or Friday, and we were probably one of the first. And then within 12 hours, 24 hours, looking at Facebook, it looked like most of the city followed suit. I think people probably would have closed earlier, except that they were waiting for Paddy's Day. Because Paddy's Day is a big day for business, and also it's kind of the start of the season after the lull of January and February. So once we made the decision to close and figured out the best way to look after staff and kind of line up all those things, talk to suppliers, that was a lot of the stress dealt with. And kind of nothing has changed really in those last 2 or 3 weeks. So just the getting closed and trying to look after people in that way was kind of the challenge. That was the stressful part.
And just to take you back, how long is you in the bar trade? How long is Sober Lane open?
Sober Lane is open 15 years, I think, this year or next year maybe, or something like that.
And that was you? Did you have Did you have a previous bar before that, and then?
Sundays well, so working in Sundays well bar. It would be with two. What's the opposite of prodigies? I don't know. Teachers, masters, whatever. Eddie and Mick in Sundays well. So it was a random thing. I finished. I did a commerce degree in UCC, and I finished that, and I trained to be a chef, which I liked, but I realised it's really hard work. So I just finished that, and part of that then you go on placement. So I was going to go to a hotel for a while, work in a kitchen, and through Sundays well, actually, how we know each other, that connections, they've always been good to me over the years. A friend of mine, Roy Thomas, said, I know somebody who was a bar in town that isn't really doing very well. Small little bar, looking for somebody to run it. Would you like to take a punt? And then I probably went in there thinking that would be a chance to do food and kind of figure out the chef thing, even though it didn't have a kitchen, so that wasn't going to help with serving food. So it was a bar called Cleavers. It was a converted butcher shop, and the guys who had it owned lots of bars, and this was one of the smaller ones, and it didn't really click. And it wouldn't be fair to say it was eclectic, but it was by far the smallest of their bars, so it just wasn't their priority. which is probably why they took a punt on somebody with virtually no experience. Like literally, I remember the first time one of the kegs ran out, no idea how to change it, and had to call somebody else from Sun as well who called their dad, and we figured it out over the phone.
And did you ever, just for people who don't know, your kind of family history is like you've a lot of medical practitioners and GPs, uncles in your family, but your dad is one of the most prominent, there is now one of the most prominent medical negligence lawyers in the country, and you have, you know, your brother and sister are qualified solicitors, well respected in.
My mother's sister. Yeah, my mother
was that something you thought of, or was it something you ran away from, or?
I think I've always assumed that I would, growing up, get into it. Probably because everyone else assumed it. I was okay at school. You know, I reckon I probably could have a good rattle off the exams. I like to think of myself as a people person. And in fairness, that is to a large extent a people person thing as well as for relationships, as you know. But I AD up in office all the time. I think I find that confining. I would have at the time anyway. Although, funnily enough, I think every business ultimately involves quite a lot of desk work and paperwork, and there's no getting away from it. But anyway, so I did commerce and I did law as a subject in it, and kept it all the way up just in case to keep that door open for myself. And then the chef thing kind of came out of nowhere. It just something I wanted to do, and it just, I suppose we're 15 years in now, and it's a nice thing to go back and do any law exams at this stage, like, you know, but there wasn't any great master plan or thought in it, like, you know.
So you were quite young then when Sober Lane opened its doors, were you? Early 20s?
I think I was 23, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, 23. And I was lucky in two ways. How it came about is the guys who ran, who owned Cleavers, I was there for about a year and a half, and it went really well. And they offered me the chance to buy into it and become a partner, and that was kind of their model. They were, you know, they'd kind of bring in a junior partner, let him run the business, and then they'd go and acquire another one. And I went to my dad and I said, look, this looks like a good opportunity, what do you think? And he said, why do 100% of the work for 10% of the profits? I said, you know, it's a good point. I said, but I don't have a better option. So this was 2005, and he said, look, 6 maybe, he said, banks are lending at the moment, and you know, this is when Celtic Tiger stuff, so we said, I reckon I probably will lend to you. And he said he'd go guarantor, and came up with the deposit. So, like, I was in a fairly unique situation that the economy was right, and also whether it was a good idea or bad idea, you can ask him, but that I was so willing to take a punt. At that young age.
What you also did then, and I suppose in the years after that, was you kind of grasped or was first to jump on social media and use social media to promote your business and to, I suppose, engage with your clients and your audience.
I think a part of that came from the first bar the only other bar that I managed, that bar Cleavers. It was a tiny bar and it was surrounded by very busy bars. So it is a successful bar now, but for a long time it's surrounded by iconic places in Cork, the Wash, Reardon's and all that. And we just couldn't compete as regards live music, food offering, size, any of these things. So we looked for ways to be different. So that's probably where the social media thing started. We were on Bebo, one of the first kind of businesses on it. And we just came up with low cost things. So Reardon's had this raffle, I remember, to win a car. And we came up with a rival idea, and we had a raffle for 10 USA biscuits, and that was just the piss take. And we had a bit of crack with it, and that became a thing every Sunday. So we realised that people were up for just having a bit of crack, and then with the social media, it was probably just because it was low cost, it was accessible, and when I wouldn't really be into technology, I was still 22 or 23, whatever at the time, so I was probably more tech savvy than my competitors would have been 40 or 50. And it took, it just worked for us. It clicked.
Yeah, probably maybe to do with the audience, but also the type of industry you're in. It allowed you to push the boundaries, be a bit cheeky, be a bit funny, be a bit out there.
Yeah, and I think for better for worse, probably one of the advantages of starting young is naivety. Probably wasn't that worried about getting something wrong, or if a post didn't get a like. I don't even know if people had likes on Facebook, if it didn't get likes or didn't get traction, or if we ran a competition that nobody entered. I'd be thinking, okay, happy days, I don't have to give away the prize. You know, like, there'd be no downside. So there was no which took a punt at things. And part of it was necessity, I guess. So I remember I wasn't nervous. The first time I was nervous about opening a business was the day that after we opened. And even though the opening went well, I kind of realised, Jesus, okay, no, this thing has to work. You know, like, and that is the good and the downside, I suppose, of my dad punt on me, which is great, and facilitated me borrowing lots of money. Then I realised, fuck, let's give this back. You know, like, so
pay it back, yeah.
It's a roller coaster. You can't really get off, like, you know.
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, well, let's make this work. But so then that drives you on to try lots of different ideas. And sorry, I'm 23. Like I see now, I don't know, 37, 38 now, and I have kids, and I was able to spend all the time on social media and do these things because I suppose I had the time and the energy for it. Whereas as you get older, they're too depreciating things, or decreasing things. So I suppose I was just lucky that I was able to have a good go off it back then too.
And then you then got into Electric Bar. That was an old ACC bank, a real prominent building on the South Mall. Is that 8 or 10 years ago now, or when was Electric formed?
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. So I think we bought in 2009 and opened in 2010. So that was a completely different thing. So they were either side of the recession, or you know, so Sober Lane was we probably paid too much for it, and we just by, I don't know why, but just thankfully the way the model was, it was kind of, say it was recession proof, because that's a hindsight thing. But you know, we were one of the first places. They weren't particularly innovative, but like every bar in town does pizzas now, whereas I think we're pretty much the first. And that's good recession food, you know, because people can share whatever. We did pitchers of beer. We were good at drink steals and that kind of stuff. So and also we were we kind of caught on that Munster rugby bandwagon, largely again through the Sunday as well, connection and stuff. Just became a good place to watch a match of Munster well at the time. So those things like 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, we got busier every year. And that was the only business I was in. So I was kind of insulated from the recession, that I was in one business that thankfully was doing well and growing. And that's what enabled us, I suppose, to give us the confidence and the ability to take a punt on another place. So Electric was an ACC bank, and
sure, you're still in your 20s now, aren't you? When Electric opened?
Yeah, I was. Let me try and do the maths. I was 28, I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we've been at Sober Lane 5 years. Again, it kind of just happened. What my dad said, look, I think this building is going to be good value, and I think we'll make a great bar and restaurant. And if it's a great bar, our plan was a late bar actually. So he said, look, I think it'll be a good property play if it doesn't click. So we went to the auction. We sent somebody to the auction and actually go ourselves, and largely because I don't think we thought we'd much of a chance. And we put in a bid, and pretty much nobody else did, and that was that. So we weren't the only bidder, but somebody bid, somebody else bid, we put in the third bid, and that was it. So this Electric building actually cost, the Sober Lane building actually cost more to buy than the Electric building. So that just shows you that I probably got a deal on Electric and paid too much for Sober Lane. So the swings and roundabouts of property with a recession.
But not only did you transform the building itself, you've more or less transformed that area of the city, that whole corner there, South Mall.
I suppose we just clicked. In fairness, the council did a superb job on the park, and the boardwalk was being built at that stage. And I'd say that was probably the tail end. Like that was a project that was started during the Celtic Tiger, and probably wouldn't have got the funding if it hadn't. So they finished it then in the recession. And there's a lack of green spaces in the city centre, you know, and so that's one of the nicer ones. And the city. So Electric is one of the few buildings that faces the river, even though I suppose you could, you know, are in some way adjacent to it. And I think, like, even in my lifetime growing up, but definitely in our parents' lifetime, people remember the river being a dirty thing. And it just, you know, in the 90s, it started getting clearer and cleaner, and didn't smell of hot weather and things like that. And that's a big thing. That's why buildings didn't face it. So the boardwalk made people realise, Jesus, there's actually, you know, a nice clean river there and its amenity, and made the city a bit more European. So we just got lucky with that next door. And as I said, Electric was built to be when we bought it, we looked at being a late bar. And then there's some people I know who own restaurants. There was Michael Ryan who and still owns Isaac's, and his wife Catherine, and Pat and Eilish, who had Fence Key at the time. and I brought them for a look. And on the first floor, and they said, "Geez, this will make amazing restaurants." Now they both said, "No matter what you do, don't open a restaurant." And I can see what they mean, but I'd never run a restaurant. We had done some food, but not a success in Sober Lane, but nothing else.
How would you describe your
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, Ernest. No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so what came of that really was, so we were, like, this was 2009, 2010, so you could see that the recession wasn't going anywhere fast, and nightclubs weren't doing well, but people were still eating out. And one of the nice things about, one of the benefits of opening a recession is that you get to be the new shiny place for a long time. So when the economy's going to go to a new place, it opens every 3 months. Whereas when it's not, it opens every 2 years. You get to be that new place. So there was a man called Dennis O'Malan. I didn't really know him. I met him once or twice, but he owned and still owns Liberty Grill. I approached him relatively to a cold call. He just runs a really good business in Liberty Grill and Cafe Gusto. Then I said, "Look, I've turned the spot into a bar. I need experience in bars as well. I'm thinking of opening a restaurant, but we're way out of my league to do it on my own. Would you wish to come on board?" And he said, "I'd like to, on the condition that I can bring my head chef Kevin with me." I said, "Great, super, that makes it even better." So the three of us embarked on that. So while Sober Lane was a solo run and Electric, I had a good team, and we were together we had a really good. Kevin was for the first 3 years, I think, and then he went off to New Zealand maybe, and Dennis was here for 6 or 7 years. So it was a really good partnership work, and they were pivotal to the food side of the business.
And how, because obviously you run the two businesses, and we get onto your current day business and how you venture into other fields. Apart from the partnerships that you have, but how would you describe your management style with so many staff and, I suppose, plates spinning at the same time? Do you delegate?
Yeah.
Are you hands-on? Do you micromanage? Or what has worked for you?
I'm a good delegator. I have some really good managers. And I haven't always been. I've certainly been into kind of headless chicken stuff, and I've been overstretched without good systems and stuff in place. But I'm fairly good now at management meetings and having systems where things don't get forgotten about as much as possible. So it's funny, we're lucky we have quite good staff retention. We have really good teams in both places. The team in Electric, particularly, some of the people have been here pretty much since we opened. And once you work with somebody for 2-3 years, it just gets way easier to it's not even managing to work with them, because there's just level of trust, and you can empower them to make decisions, and similarly they have the confidence to take on that empowerment and say, "Yeah, look, you weren't here that night, but I just felt that that person, we messed up their meal, we comped it or whatever," and you just
trust that decision.
It just makes the running of things way easier,
Yeah. And then, so obviously you've the two business going, and did you notice a gap in the market? I want to get into the Kinsale gin product, which is this fabulous gin product that you've established. You have a business partner there, is it Tom?
Yeah, Tom and Colin. There was a chapter in between where I tried a load of things that definitely didn't work.
Okay.
And that would have taught me lots of things about my management style or lack of it. It's lots of fun to start businesses. Running them isn't really as much fun. So
yeah.
The novelty goes. So we had a recruitment agency. We had a business outsourcing thing for financial services. We had when I say we, I did them with other people, and that was kind of the common thread. We had a creative agency, which is a nice kind of shiny word for really know what they're doing. Who'll take a punt at things. We had a Sober Lane in Dublin. I was involved in the nightclub, setting up Voodoo and the Brogue. So, and to be fair, all things with different levels of success. So Voodoo was a great success, and I got out of it to do Sober Lane Dublin, which wasn't. I was back the wrong horse.
And how like with only so many hours in the day, Ernest, how was it that you had to decide that you just it was too much? How do you manage all that, or how does business interest?
At that stage, the honest answer probably was I wasn't managing them.
Yeah.
So a combination of having good good business partners, I guess, who made it possible or maybe tolerated it. I suppose that one nice thing about a lot of those would be daytime businesses, and the bars, the key is being there at night, so you do get to live it. You do get two goals, but the only downside is you wouldn't be long becoming burnt out by having a day job and a nighttime job. And the trickiest thing actually was in Dublin, being spread geographically was really tough. And funnily enough, there's definitely lessons to be learned from this isolation period about working remotely and how you don't actually need to be in a place. Maybe there's better ways that, but for the hospitality side of it, I felt that you did anyway. So like when I moved up to Dublin and probably sacrificed things in Soberlane and Electric, which are great businesses, to give Dublin a proper go. We lived there for nearly a year, but we just opened in the wrong location. And by the time I realised that, we were open and there wasn't a whole lot I could do about it. Wrong location as in footfall, and we came up with an offering that neighbourhood didn't want or need. And it's a pity because it was a really nice bar and we had a nice crew there and it was a nice neighbourhood, but it just didn't click. And I'm looking at Soberlane and Electric clicked and Voodoo did. And Soberlane Dublin was one of the first ones that I've been stuck in that just didn't work. And it's very, it's a strange feeling. When you're, when I suppose you're used to things working and then something just doesn't. And it's kind of hard to change direction when you're in the middle of it. So that was a very steep learning curve.
When you have so many businesses like that, and maybe because you have separate business partners in each one, if one business is failing in a portfolio business, do you then tip into the other business to supplement it, or is that ring fence and that isolated and that's that unit? If that doesn't work, that's not working, but I'm not going to sacrifice the financial prudence or diligence of the other or sustainability of the other businesses, or does each business carry each other in a setup like that?
There certainly would have been a bit of dipping into the other businesses, but more, not so much even financially, more from attention and resources. Nicking your best people. So we brought our crew from Soberlane Cork and just put them up, some of our best people up in Soberlane Dublin, which didn't work in two counts. It weakened our Cork offering, and also in Dublin people wanted to be served by Dublin people to some extent. They didn't want, and the strengths of the Cork people, their popularity, connections here and stuff didn't necessarily translate or resonate up there. So there was that, and also like maybe some people have the ability to run multiple things like that, but for me, I was way beyond my capacity, and that I couldn't. What I was bringing to each business was definitely diminishing, and this would have been maybe 2015. So one downside of the economy starting to flip again is that the competition gets really starts heating up. So a lot of our guys from our different, so the guy who Phil, who was a big part of Soberlane and ran it for 10 years or something like that, he went and opened Brick Lane. Colvin Cyprian went and opened Joe's and Bros. So which are all really
which
good
bought
and
two
strong
great businesses in Cork, yeah.
Yeah, so well, I was expanding and doing other things and maybe reducing the quality or the attention to detail in Soberlane and Electric. At the same time, the competition was upping its game, which isn't obviously a good combination. So but from a personal point of view and business point of view, I realised I definitely needed to get back to basics, concentrate on my core businesses, and maybe deal with something that was complementary. And that's why the gin thing came. And funny, I was the man who owned Cleavers, who gave me my first bar job, was a man called Tom Reardon. And the gin, which started actually as a whiskey business and is becoming a whiskey business again, he had the idea. I was working with his sister Clodagh, and we'd always kept in touch over the last 15 years. I'd be asking him advice on bar things, and an opportunity came up to get involved in that business. So they were developing Kinsale Gin at the time, and I was in the really just pulling back from everything. So kind of had to be convinced, and I would say cajoled, because I don't think he needed me, but I knew it was a good opportunity, but I'd been a bit burned by doing other things. So I really slowly eased my way into it, and just. He was also in a similar phase where he had lots of things going on. So he was quite happy. So like our first batch Kinsale Gin started with 100 bottles, literally. That was for sale in one shop, Bradley Centre on Main Street. And when they sold out, then we made the next batch, and I think the next batch was 300 bottles or whatever. So it was a lovely, gradual thing. From a business point of view, it probably wasn't. So we were quite early to the gin game, and then it exploded, and lots of people like Dingle and Drumshanbo, grew at a phenomenal rate. And maybe if we were more confident or switched on or braver, we might have tapped into that, but it just wasn't where we were personally at the time. And but it just made it a lovely, sustainable business. And for me, it's a business I knew nothing about. I'd sold gin, but I'd never made a product. I didn't understand the detail that goes into packaging and all, the logistics of it. Had never been in a business where you look at exporting. Had never been in a business where really, bad debts and things are an option. So one lovely thing the bar restaurant game is a customer comes in, they pay us straight away. Whereas in the gin game, you send somebody the stuff and you get paid in 30 or 60 or 90 days or not at all. So all those challenges, but at least it was a slow, it wasn't a steep learning curve, which was nice. So it made it less stressful, more enjoyable. And I knew I probably didn't have the discipline to not get stuck in other businesses or diversify, where at least this was one that was somewhat related to what I was doing. I could do it from Cork. It was complementary to my existing businesses. It was with a business partner that I had a really good work relationship with, and we were on the same page at the pace we wanted to grow at.
Where is Kinsale Gin now today? What stage are you at?
About a year ago, maybe, it got to the stage where, despite not getting a whole lot of TLC, it was just growing and growing, which was great. And we had requests to export it and different things. So there was a man who used to work for Heineken, and he owned bars, lots of other things, like Colin Ross. He'd been involved in a vodka business in the US, and we both knew him personally, and we had been asking him for advice. And we caught him just between projects, and we asked him to become a business partner. That became the three of us. And we said, look, we're looking at giving this a proper go. So he tackled it full time, and it just came on leaps and bounds then, because it just got the proper TLC it needed. And he's a very structured individual, which I wouldn't be, and Tom wouldn't really be either. So we, in the last year,
so it's a nice fit for everybody.
Yeah, it made a big, and we've done a huge amount of work in the background. We'll chat about in a second. We've loads of things just about to happen, and funnily enough, this Corona crap it's going to change our plans, but it might offer some opportunities as well. It's a very exciting time in that business, actually.
And you're now going into the whiskey business as well?
Yeah, so whiskey takes 3 years to mature, and if you want to sell Irish whiskey in the States, it's 4 years. So we started laying down whiskey 4 years ago, so that started coming mature last year and this year. So our plan was to concentrate on the States and launch both the gin and the whiskey in Rhode Island, because Newport and Rhode Island is twinned with Kinsale. There's a big connection between the two. Launch there around this June. No, obviously that's not going to be happening, so that's on the back burner. We're ready to go. There was probably a year in getting the packaging right. All your recipes have to be tested and approved by the FDA over there, and you went to the market then for funding, didn't you, with a very unique idea? Yeah, so I suppose we knew we were going to need money. We didn't know how much of it we'd get, so we kind of had tiered plans about whether or not how many markets we launched at a time, whether we launched the gin and the whiskey together, how much whiskey we'd lay down for future use, whether or not we'd build a distillery. So it's the old business expansion scheme. It's called the EIS scheme now, and we kind of saw that was being underutilized. A lot of whiskey, in the background, a lot of bigger whiskey companies had used it. I suppose we just made it slightly more informal. So instead of approaching funds, we approached individuals. We just put it up on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we were overwhelmed. So I think we finished up with about 750 grand, which was made up of tranches of. We did it in €4,000 tranches and laid down stock against it. So I think the average investment is probably €8,000. Most people. I'm not saying it's an insignificant amount, but it's different the way that scheme is usually used. and also it just, so instead of having maybe 3 investors at 250 grand each, we have, I don't know, there's probably 80 people there or something like that, between 60 and 80. And they all have an interest in it, so they're saying, well, my cousin owns a bar in London, maybe you should talk to him, and it's really good cohort to support and ambassadors out there.
And what's the plans with the whiskey? Is that going to go with the gin to America, or is that at the same production level or production stage?
Yeah, so it's our first, so our whiskey is ready to go. It's been bottled, all the packaging, everything is done. It's been bottled, what date is today? It's been bottled week 27th, our very first run of whiskey.
And where is the distillery? Is it in Kinsale?
So our gin is made by West Cork Distillers in Skibbereen, and our whiskey comes from the Great Northern Distillery, Mr. Teeling in Dundalk.
Oh, yeah.
So we have invested in a gin still, and we're currently going for planning. It's planning submitted for a really nice site in Kinsale. Okay. So that's where we are at the moment.
Will that become then?
I would. Yeah.
Sorry, Ernest.
No, our plan would be to hopefully we'll need our production partners, because we won't be able to make enough ourselves. That'd be the plan. But I think we'd like to have some control over our own supply. There's provenance issues.
Sure.
There's a market that's there's lots of advantages to having your own production facility as well, even though it's horrifically expensive to get off the ground.
And if the site in Kinsale and production goes through there, will that become like a visitor centre type?
I think it's going to have to go through, because we bought the equipment.
Okay. Very good.
It's so better go through. If it'll go through there, it'll go through somewhere in Kinsale, but I think it will. So the plan would be eventually to do a visitor centre and that kind of stuff. Wow. Maybe in the town itself, or maybe on the site, or whatever. The visitor centres are a funny one, because so you can build a distillery to be really efficient and make alcohol, and then you have to build one that looks pretty, and that's way more expensive. So most factories are built to, and that's what it is ultimately, a factory. So to make things as opposed to look pretty. So trying to reconcile those two things is what makes it expensive. So we certainly wouldn't be at the stage where we could have built a visitor centre friendly distillery. It's funny, it's a real opportunity costing at the moment. So we, for a long time, I've had a big interest in the Chinese market, and I've been burrowing away at the background and trying to build networks and contacts. And it's a part of the world that really interests me. And I don't have any particularly good contacts there, but I'm friendly with people who do, and I've been very kind to share those contacts. Whereas my business partner, Colin, Tom is more in charge of the manufacturing side of it and new product development and all the logistics. Colin has been involved in alcohol business in the States, so will be far more experienced than me. So our plan was to launch in the States and then get around China on board. Whereas I think at the moment, China is going to be first out of this isolation thing, and I think they are going to pump the economy full of money to get it back rolling and have the resources to do that. So we've done a 180 and are focusing, putting most of our attentions now on China. So there's opportunity cost that will mean maybe that we can't support or push the States in the timeline when we want to.
Yeah, you just adjust.
That'll depend on how it goes, but it's very interesting, and being in bars and restaurants is a really interesting, challenging, stimulating business. But one problem is that it's not easily transportable. You can't export your product to, so you are subject to bad weather or like small things that you wouldn't think would affect a business, but if road work set up outside your bar or your restaurant, like, it is a big factor. Whereas if you have a product that you can export, if one economy isn't working, you can try somewhere else. If there's a cliff, you can try somewhere else. And that by picking the wrong location in Sober Lane, in Sober Lane, Dublin, that's what made me really want to try a business that if you went down the wrong avenue, that you could reverse and try again, that you weren't as pot committed, being stuck in one premises. So it's nice to be in a business that's flexible or malleable in that way, that okay, we're all going for the States, that doesn't work, we have lovely liquid ready to go, let's try it in the Chinese market.
So if I could just bring you back to the current situation with the hospitality industry, how do you think it's going to come out of this? Do you think it's going to be all of a sudden the doors are open, everybody's going to rush back into the bars and restaurants? Do you think it's going to be a drip feed? How is it going to affect, cash flow and these businesses around the country and even around the world, but it's in Cork in particular?
Yeah.
How are we going to go back into normal life?
Just before we were chatting, I was watching I don't know what you call a video podcast, I mean, it's called a vlog, whatever, a video interview with a guy, Danny Mayer. So he owns the Union Square hospitality group. Is Union Square? Union Cafe, something like that. But he owns a lot of really successful restaurants in New York, and he owns Shake Shack, which I think is in London. I don't know if this one in Dublin, but really interesting guy, and has written a really good book called Setting the Table on the Business of Restaurants. And he was saying that he thinks after 9/11, the way metal detectors came into airports, he thinks, temperature scanners or something will come into, or when came into airports, they will come into restaurants. Now, I think that's a bit out there.
Yeah.
Science fiction, but it wasn't a bad idea,
Yeah.
And I would think that he's thinking about investing for the next, and I don't know, I'm guessing this is just a phase of the arc we're heading into. I think that hopefully not anytime soon, but I don't think this is going to be our only virus or thing like this in our lifetimes. So it's funny, that sounds far-fetched, but if that product came out and was affordable, and even if it was a placebo and gave customers the confidence to come back to places, sign me up. So the social distancing thing, if it phases in, is tricky because a restaurant would, so I think our main room here, Electric, takes about 100 people. That room doesn't work with less than, say, 50 people. And so the spacing of it, that social distancing wouldn't work. With pubs, I think we saw firsthand that social distancing doesn't work in pubs, or is very challenging, and even if it is, it's not economically viable. So I think it kind of needs to be an all or nothing. And customers will come back gradually, and that's a challenge because it probably means you need to be loss-making for a while to get back to viability, and how long that takes will be the challenge. Like if you're Electric, we're a seasonal business, but we're lucky that we've a steady enough business all year round. Corporates replace the tourism, tourists kind of balance the summer and the winter. Christmas is really good. But if you're a business that's just really seasonal, those 3 or 4 months in the summer, and you're after missing the summer, it's a long time till next summer. I don't know if there's going to be a change in behaviours as regards people. One nice thing about food is people always need to eat. And the novelty of going out, or the convenience, or whatever, or having something to celebrate will be a factor. It's why we all died in January and then it goes out the window in February. So I think people are enjoying cooking at home at the moment and are realising they're saving money by socialising less. But I think that we're social animals and that will come back. I'm a publican, so I'm biased. I like to think that enjoying a drink in a bar is a different environment to enjoying it at home. And that there's added value to the experience there. There's an old saying that the 2 things you'll never be able to buy online are a haircut and a pint of Guinness, and that is holding true with this at the moment anyway. I saw online that there's some bar in Belfast doing delivery of pints of Guinness. I don't know what quality they arrive in or when it gets poured or whatever, but it's a bit of fun anyway.
Yeah, it is. You just need to adjust. Ernest, thanks so much.
I was going to say the food delivery thing.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. We have tried Just Eat and Deliveroo and these things in Sober Lane before, and thankfully there was lots of customer demand for it. But we really struggled with the logistics of it. There's a whole science to packaging, keeping food hot, and things you wouldn't think of. But one of our biggest sellers is chicken goujons. So the more success we have in keeping them hot, basically with more airtight packaging, that creates steam, which causes the coating to come off the chicken. It sounds like a simple thing, but we're really proud of our chicken goujons, and somebody getting an inferior product in their home was a big problem for us. So we've been in and out of the delivery thing a few times and never really got it right. A tricky thing is, now that in fairness, people like Deliveroo have come up with somewhat efficient solutions for this. But if you have a restaurant, when the tables are full, they're full. So you say to the person, you can either wait or you can go to somewhere else. But in Deliveroo, 10 dockets can come through in a minute. And I remember back at the time when we were doing it originally, it was when X Factor, one of these shows, was really big. So there'd be nothing
Saturday
on Sunday,
night.
8 o'clock would start, and you would just get hammered with orders. And at the same time, when customers are coming in to watch it, and so it's a challenge. So I would be curious. There's a lot of businesses trying it at the moment.
Have you seen this new idea I saw? Where basically it's instead of a restaurant, you just make a kitchen just for deliveries.
There's a few of them on Deliveroo, so there's a few places if you look up, and they don't have Foodie is one FUDI. There's a vegan place.
So you just put in a kitchen, and it's just for the delivery market. No sit down whatsoever.
In London, and I think they've one in Dublin too. But in London, certainly Deliveroo create an industrial unit with 10 or 15 kitchens, and you can go in and rent it, and where it really works is for the guys who do the farmers markets, who have their mobile premises but don't have the infrastructure to do it. And also
kitchen.
Markets are by day, this is by night. It's a complimentary thing, and I don't know how much they charge for it. If people are doing it, it must be affordable. But it is a really nice way to do it. Like if some of the really big delivery places, particularly in the States, they're good at, or London, they'll have a whole different model for delivery versus eat-in, because it's just a different kitchen layout and time.
Two different businesses,
It's a thing I wish I had spent more time perfecting, and that probably not left with Sober Lane might still be open now to some extent doing it. But I suppose also we do pizzas, burgers, and chicken, and maybe with the exception of chicken, there's no shortage of burgers and pizzas on Deliveroo. Like pizza is the ultimate delivery food because it just travels well and it keeps hot and whatever. So it's a crowded space anyway,
Ernest, thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really interesting. One last question. 37/38-year-old Ernest, what does he say now if he was to meet 23-year-old Ernest?
Don't open a bar in Dublin. And the other thing is probably to back myself. What probably was the making and breaking me in a few of the things was that I started them and then probably pull back. So there's definitely a few things, the recruitment agency and the creative agency, that I pulled the plug on. When I say too early to see if they're going to work, if they're going to fail. Now, if they failed, would I be around? I don't know. So, but I suppose before I started them, I probably should have thought, okay, I'm going to see this through. So if I'm going to do something, do it properly. Hindsight in 2020, I guess, but I'm going to stick with the open a bar in Dublin.
Yeah, but I suppose you also have to make those mistakes to learn the lessons to get where you are now, isn't it?
Yeah, but definitely with the gin business, it's in a very nice way. I have two business partners who I enjoy working with greatly. We have similar backgrounds now. We either were or are all publicans. We want a similar thing from the business, and it's so we're growing it at this might sound like amateur hour, maybe it is, but we're growing it at a pace that suits us and is complementary with our lifestyles and our other commitments. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm sure it's led to missed opportunities and missed revenues and whatever else, but look, it's still there and it's growing, so I'm happy with it.
And is it possible to buy Kinsale Gin online at the moment?
It is.
Where would you get it?
The Whiskey Store or Bradley's.
Okay.
And thankfully most off licenses.
Okay, great.
And it's in most super values. It's in Centras. Yeah. It's in a lot of really, really good independents. O'Donovan's off licenses, Carryouts, Matson's. Yeah, so thankfully it's out there quite a bit.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Ernest, thank you so much again. We wish you continued success. We'll be watching as usual, and we will be in your bars and restaurants enjoying it. And look, all the best for everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy that day.